It's my great pleasure to invite our next speaker, welcome our next speaker, Mrs. Gauri Singh, who started her career at the government of India and is now the Deputy Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency, a key agency which, by the way, we have a lot in common also historically, because I remember well when our organization, together with some others, suggested to create such an organization. One of the first countries we got support, I spoke at that time to the at that time Minister for New and Renewable Energy, and India was one of the first and logically now one of the leaders in this agency. Gauri, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. And well, I think the last time we met virtually was at an IRENA event when we launched the white paper on community energy, stimulating investment in community energy, which also reflects part of what we're going to discuss, of course, in Delhi later this year. Now, Gauri, I have the pleasure to hand over to you and request you to speak to our audience.
Thank you so much, Stefan, and thank you to World Wind Energy Association and Terry for having me at this launch. I think it's really exciting that in November we'll be looking forward to a physical meeting, and I'm really looking forward to it. What I thought is that I'll just take maybe 3-4 slides to take you through some of the to put together a global perspective, and then maybe focus somewhat on what's happening in India. So I'll just try and share my screen, and if you can tell me if you can see my slides. So it's when we are talking of what is happening at the global level, what I wanted to actually show with this slide is if we are looking at what the countries currently are planning, which were the plans that they have at the national levels or what they've put in their NDCs. By 2030, we are looking at the energy-related emissions move up slightly from where we are right now to to around 35, a level of 35 gigatons, and then decrease slightly in 2030. And similarly, even in the energy demand, we can see that scenario that's looking is that there is a increase from around 600 exajoules that we are in the final energy supply to maybe around 710 in 2030. And also, if you look at where we feel that we will be going with the planned energy scenario, it's not very although you do see that there seems to be a very marginal increase in the fossil fuel, which means that the renewable energy part will rise, but still the declines are not enough to take us to where we want to go, which is to below 1.5 degrees. So in terms of the scenario that IRENA has built, which is the transforming energy scenario, which is not just it's not just climate compliant, but also it's something which is now not just economically feasible, but also technologically feasible, which actually takes us much further into where we need to go to keep the level of temperature to well below 1.5 degrees. Can we move to the next, please? So while we do see the renewables have been expanding globally with new capacity expansion moving up, and even in the last year, many sectors like the manufacturing and others were under challenge, but renewables was really on an overdrive. So we did see expanding capacities even last year. Can we move to the next, please? And obviously, this has been driven, as we all know, with rapidly declining costs. And costs have, as Dr. Ajay Mathur also pointed out, now it's not about economics, it's not about renewables being competitive or not competitive. In fact, in more than half the countries around the world, renewables is cost competitive. In a IRENA renewable power generation cost report recently, what we found is the new capacities that are added in fossil fuel are more expensive than the solar and wind, which is to say that if today we were to retire 500 gigawatts of the least efficient thermal power plants, and replace them with solar and wind, we'd probably end up saving almost $12 billion in the cost of power. So the economics are very clear, and I think in India more so with the kind of pricing that we are seeing in auctions. The next, please. So, so the point that I'm trying to make is that if we move as per what the countries are currently planning, we'll probably reach about 25% of renewable energy share in the TFEC, which in the total final energy consumption, which as we can see is not enough. It needs to be much more, and that is what. And if that is to happen, India definitely has a very major role to play. Can we just move to? We can just now move out of the slideshow, please. Yes. So I mean, if you look at the renewables in India, which represent almost a quarter of the installed capacity and about 10% of the generation. And if you look at also the electricity per capita in India, which is around 1,200 units, pretty much 1/3 of the global average, and much less than, say, Japan, which is around 7,000 units. It's a country that, as Bhanu just said, where all villages and all households have been connected. We just added, as he said, 20 million more households, which means that there is, and it's an economy that's growing. The aspirations of people are growing. So the question really is that moving forward, what's the kind of electricity mix that will happen? Now, it's the trend that has been very prominent in India is that the renewable capacities that are getting added are more than the fossil fuel capacities. So while in the developed world, the discussion is more about substitution of energy sources and in energy efficiency. In India, the planning is much more about how much of the increase in the demand can be met through renewable energy. And I think some of the very important drivers that give us confidence in the path that India is moving forward is obviously the recent announcement of the Honorable Prime Minister, where he stated that India is committed to 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. Also, the growing focus and understanding that on electrification of sectors like which the policy is there is a clear policy thrust on greater electrification, with also the policy coming for electrical mobility. And I think the newly announced hydrogen mission, which has a focus on green hydrogen as well, is a very important announcement, because what we understand is that In India, the focus will be more on the green ammonia. And for some of us who understand the fertilizer sector in India, we do know that there are these very large public sector units that pretty much dominate the ammonia production in India. And the way the policy will move will be very important in terms of how these public sector units, which haven't been so involved in greening their manufacturing in the ways that they move. Clearly, the ongoing auctions and the experiments that are happening in terms of coming out with auctions with storage, coming out with very different ways and innovative ways of how more deployment can be done on the ground. These are all indicative of the great urgency that is there even on the policy side to make sure that the path that has been and the intent that has been spelled out by the Prime Minister can be followed up with very strong implementation on the ground. So I think for all purposes, I think it's really very exciting time, and what happens in India will clearly be very important in the way in which the scenario will look at a global level. So let me stop here and by saying that I very much look forward to the conference in November, and I hope that the many issues that that are at a discussion level in the power sector can actually be discussed in depth, and I'm actually very happy to see that it's a wind and sun conference, because it's really a topic which is very relevant for India. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gauri, for sharing your views with us, and in particular for showing us the global picture. And I think indeed it is very encouraging to see that the economics, also technology, are on our side. So there is not so much need to discuss whether, but just now how to accelerate, also for underlining the urgency and the role now. I think it's a bit clearer now, the role that India is playing and has to play as one of those countries which is leading the world in this global transformation. Again, thank you very much to Gauri in Abu Dhabi. And now let's go back to India.